let's get started on homework number 27. The first question is about finding the volume. So a cylinder has a radius of 5 inches and a height of 6 1/4 inches. So a cylinder has a volume formula of pi times r squared times h. So that means if I'm trying to find the volume here of a cylinder and then also a sphere, then I need to use both of these formulas. A sphere formula is pi r cubed. It's asking me what is the difference between the volumes. So the difference means to subtract. First I find the volumes, then I subtract them, and round my answer to the nearest tenth. So I want to find the difference between the volumes of the cylinder and the sphere. Let's start with the cylinder. I need to erase and replace my radius and my height. So my radius is 5 squared, and my height is 6 1/4. I'm going to use the decimal 6.25. So now I'm going to pick up my calculator, and I'm going to type all of that math. Pi times 5 squared times 6.25. Now I'm going to go about 4 decimal places here, or actually it's not that long. I think I'm going to write the entire volume because I don't want to round in the middle of my problem. I want to round at the end of my problem. So I'm going to write all of the digits that I see here on my calculator. That is the volume in cubic inches for my cylinder. Now let's do the same thing for the sphere, but let's use the sphere formula. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So this time I'm going to erase and replace my radius, and it has a radius of 4. So I'm going to use my fraction button on my calculator. For me, it's in the alpha menu. So there's my fraction, 4/3. Then next to my fraction, I'm going to press times pi times 4, power button, right, that's this arrow here, raised up to the 3rd power. And this time I get a volume of 268.082571. And now I'm going to subtract these numbers together, right? So I'll put this in the middle here. I'm going to subtract. I see it up here, but I also see it on my paper. So 490.87385521. I'm going to subtract 268.082571. And now I can round my answer. It says round to the nearest tenth of a cubic unit. So the answer is 222.8. So 79 is going to round up to 8. 228.8 inches cubed is the difference. Next question. Function p is a linear function with a y-intercept of x. All linear functions look like this. And so I'm telling you it has a y-intercept of 7. I think I just said x, I'm not sure. So I'm going to input a 7 here. I do not know anything about the rate of change or the slope. They didn't tell me anything about that. So I'm going to leave that as an m for now. Function q, so this is function p. So I'm actually going to call this p for now. Now function q is defined by this equation. Okay, so function q is negative 2/5 x plus 3. All right, so function q has all of the information. It has the slope, it has the y-intercept. So right now, the only thing I know is that function p has a larger or higher y-intercept. I don't know whether it's tilting up or down. I don't know if it's steep or shallow because I have no information about that slope. But I do know that q has a negative slope. So let's see. Both functions have the same slope? I don't know, because I don't know the slope of p. So that's not true. Both functions have a negative slope. Well, definitely Q does, but I don't know about P. So that one is not a must be true. The functions will have the same input when y is 0. Okay, this is interesting. The y's are here. So if I take those y's away and put a 0 here, would they both be the same sentence? I'm not sure, because even if I got x by itself, I would still have an m. So I don't know. I don't know. So I'll put those y's back. So I'm not sure about this one. The functions will have different outputs when x is 0. Okay, well, I'm going to erase and replace this with 0. And when I do that, I actually can rewrite these sentences because there's some math that I can do here. So I'm going to say m times 0, 0. All right, 0 plus 7 is just 7. Okay. And now for my second sentence here in green, if I do this math, I'm going to get y is equal to 0 plus 3, also known as 3. And that is definitely different. Y can't be 7 and be 3. So they will have different outputs? Absolutely. So I was able to prove that this sentence must be true. Number 3, a crane is lowering a concrete block from a height of 625 feet above the ground. This right here is the starting value, starting at 625, so that's the y-intercept. That is the initial value, or the y-intercept. So in a linear function, that would be this value, the constant. So 625 is the constant, and it is lowering at 4.8 feet per second. Which function can be used to determine the height above the ground? All right, well, first of all, we need to know that this is your rate of change, how you're changing, how your height is changing, and this is your initial value, where you start. So I know for sure that my constant value has to be 625, because that is where I'm starting at. So I see this constant, I see this constant, I see this constant, and I see that constant. So let's take a look. Which one of them is positive 625? Nope. Nope. And you see that? No, I don't start below ground at 625. I start above ground. So this is the correct answer. If you want to check the rate of change, lowering means to be minusing, and 4.8 feet per second is also true. Question number 4. When you divide like bases, you keep the base the same, and you subtract 2 powers, the numerator and the denominator's power. Now you subtract, that's the formula, but the 3 also has its own minus. So that is 9 minus minus 3, or 3 to the 12th. Question 5. Which equation is for the line that passes through the points negative 2, 0.5, and 2, negative 0.5? All right, let's see. I'm going to make a little chart here. Negative 2, 0.5, positive 2, negative 0.5, and I'm going to calculate my rate of change, or my slope. Sorry, delta y over delta x. So y minus y over x minus x. Looks like I'm going to get negative 1 over 4. So I know that my slope has to be negative 1 over 4. Check, not a check. Check, check. Okay, so that is done. Now what I have to do, now what I have to do is focus on, so I know this one's out, I need to focus on the y-intercept, the b value. I need to figure out what that b value is. The only way for you to figure out what a b value is, since we already know the slope is negative 1/4, the only way to figure out what the right equation here is going to be is to take a point and understand that these represent x and y values. So if I were to erase and replace these x and y values with these x and y values, I should get a true statement. So let me show you what I mean. If I take this number and put it in the x position, and take that number and put it in the y position, I should get a true statement. So is 0.5 equal to, let's see, this is negative 2 halves. Is that equal to 1.5? No. So this statement is not true. Let's try over here. Put that in for x, put that in for y. Is 0.5 equal to negative 1/4 times 2? 0.5 is equal to, negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2/4, and that is the same as 1/2. So this is the correct solution. I know because I had to determine the slope, right, which I did. I eliminated this option. Then I had to guess and check. Put this in for x, put that in for y. If it works, it's true. Now I have to check this other value. I have to erase and replace and check this value. This is for x, this is for y. Is negative 0.5 equal to negative 1/4 times positive 2? So is negative 0.5 equal to negative 2/4? It is. If both points are true, then we have found the answer. Question 6. Jose is keeping track of the money in his savings account. He started the year with $25,000 and only withdraws his rent payment each month. The equation below represents the total amount in his savings account each month. What does the slope of the graph of this equation represent? Well, the slope is this number here, right? The number multiplying x. So the slope represents the $800, The $800 is negative because that is a withdrawal, a deduction. The $800 deduction for his rent each month is what the rate of change is, or the slope of the graph. What does the y-intercept of this graph represent? The $25,000 represents the initial value, the starting amount, the beginning value, beginning amount. All of those words would be acceptable in here, but it must state that it is the starting point of those values. Which graph below does not represent a function? To determine if an graph is a function, you need to use something called the vertical line test. And as you scan each of these graphs, if you ever touch the graph in more than one place at a time, like here, you fail the vertical line test. So A is not a function. Number 8, which table of values does not represent a linear function? Now you can be a function, but that doesn't make you linear. So this one we are looking for a constant rate of change, a constant pattern for the y's, a constant same pattern for the x's. So we can see here we're going up by ones. We're going up by ones. We're going up by ones. This one is not going up by ones. You see that? So this one cannot be a linear function. Cannot be a linear function. Last question, which table represents a relation that is not a function? Right now this is different. The last question was asking you if it's linear. This one doesn't care if it's linear or not. It just wants to know if it is indeed a function. That's what you're looking for. a table that has no repeating x values with a different y value. So scan your x's. If they're all unique, that's a function. Scan your x values. If they're all unique, that's a function. Scan your x values. Scan your x values. If ever you find a repeat with a different output, this one is not a function. That concludes the tutorial for homework number